Bismillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalatu wassalam ala afdali anbiyahi wa mursaleen wa Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. This is the continuation of the Practical Tawheed series. The first book that we did was called The Meaning of La Ilaha Illallah by Ahmed Miliber, an Indian scholar. And the book we're doing now is called Tawheed Iman, The Strengthening of Faith, by Sheikh Ismail ibn Abdul Ghani ad-Dihlawi from India also. One of the reasons that I started this Practical Tawheed series was to just expose people to other people. No, I'm not asleep, man. I'm up, man. I've been up since Fajr. Just doing a little research, searching up some things I wanted to know. So to expose people to other scholars from other regions, because there are other opinions out there that exist outside of Najd, outside of the Middle East, about particular issues. Some of them you don't want to open up on the general public. Some of them just for student knowledge to have this debate or discussion. Some of it I think that the general public should know and should be aware of. But this particular chapter of the book is about Asma min Ghayr Musammiyat. It's names that are given, that have no meaning. Meaning, this chapter is going to be talking about names of these false deities that the people give them. In reality, they just names. They don't even have a reality to them. And the Shaykh's going to explain what he means by that. The ayah that he brings is in Surah Yusuf, verse 39 and 40, where he says, Ya sahib as-sijni arbab mutafarriqun khayrun am Allah wahid al-qahhar. And he says, when Yusuf alayhi salam was in the prison, he said to the two people in the prison with him, O companions of the prison, are many lords, many different lords, better, or Allah the one, the irresistible? Then Allah goes on and it says, مَا تَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِهِ إِلَّا أَسْمَاءً سَمَّيْتُمُوهَا أَنْتُمْ وَآبَاءَكُمْ مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ بِهَا مِن سُلْطَانٍ. And he says that, and you only worship, what you worship other than Allah is nothing but names that your forefathers before you has named. That Allah didn't send down no authority for. So whether they call it Jesus, that's a name that Allah sent down no authority for. They named their God that. Buddha, they named their God that. Confucius, they named their God that. Different names of the sun, the moon, and the stars. All these different names and all these different gods. These are names that people of the past gave. People of the past gave to these particular gods. And Allah, He continues, إِنَّ الْحُكْمُ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ, that the judgment is only for Allah. أَمْرَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهِ. And He says that the hukm is for Allah. And the two types of hukm is the one that is kawni, universal, and the one that is shari, legislative. So both of them hukm are for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But only one, nobody else can deal in at all. That's kawni. The hukm that is kawni. The universal law that is only for Allah. Decree when it rains, who dies, who lives, who's born, who's sick, who's healthy. The sun rising and setting, the stars coming out. All of these issues are kawni. And that's for Allah alone, period. Hukm has some explanation, but it's not the class for it. That we know that the sharia that Allah sent down is to be obeyed and followed and be implemented. Top to bottom, from rulers down to the people. But we know that people can make judgments in the dunya that may, as long as it doesn't go against a clear text, can be implemented. Like street laws, like how much allowance you give your kids, or how you punish your children. There is no specific rulings on these particular issues, but Islam generally speaks about things that are benefit for people. And we know that we can make rulings in these things as long as it goes in a clear text. But the hukm kawni is only for Allah. Universal hukm is only for Allah. And what is the hukum that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about in this ayah? He says, Amra alla ta'budu illa iyyah. That the judgment that Allah has decreed that none is to be worshipped but Him alone. Not these names you have made up. These names that you have made up. The Tooth Fairy, the Bunny, Easter Bunny, Santa Claus. These names that the people have made up. And they come from real shirk though. They may play around and make them commercial now, but these things come from real shirk if you study them. They came from real things these people prayed to and obeyed and worshipped. ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ. And that is the upright religion. The religion that is straight. Meaning the worship of Allah of alone and leaving off these false Tawheed. These false names. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. He said, but most of mankind does not know. Meaning most of mankind is upon shirk. Most of mankind, we know one of the things we take from this ayat, that the majority does not rule. There's no such thing like in democracy, the majority rules. Islam doesn't say that. The truth rules, not the majority, even if the truth is only one person. Because Allah says, وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Akthar here, most. The majority of are not upon Tawheed. They are upon worshipping these names, these false names, and these Tawheed that their ancestors were worshipping. Sheikh Ismail Abdul Ghani, rahimahullah ta'ala, he begins, he says, بصرف النظر عن ذلك فإنه لا وجود لهؤلاء سادة الأرباب الذين يشركون الجحا في ملك الله وملكوته. And he says, turn away from what these people are talking about. That they name these gods, and they have names for them. Saturn, Kronos, different names, Jesus. He says, فإنه لا وجود لهؤلاء سادة الأرباب. He said, in reality, there is no reality, no presence of these things. They're just names. They're fairy tales. He says, these things that people believe that are present in the universe with Allah, that have some bearing on how things go about in daily life and in the universe. He said, this is no reality. This is a fake belief. Literally, they're worshiping Jesus. That didn't even happen. Literally, what the Hindus are worshiping and Vishnu and these different gods they're worshiping, these things literally only exist on paper. They only exist on paper and inside the khiyal of a human being, inside the imagination of the person. And he says, إِنَّمَا هُمْ مِن نَسْجِ الْخِيَالِ. He said, this is only from their imagination. It's no different than Star Wars. It's no different than the Avengers, Superman, the Justice League. It's really no difference. There's no difference between opening up a comic book and what these people are believing. There's no reality to Superman. And there's no reality to these false deities. And he says, فَمَنْ يَتَخَيَّلَ أَنْ فَلَانَ بِيَدِ إِنْزَالَ الْأَمْطَارِ. And from these type of juhal and these types of fantasies, that they believe that other than Allah can bring down rain. This is a fantasy. This isn't real. وَإِصَالُ سَحَّابٍ. That they move the clouds. وَفَلَانَ بِيَدِ إِنْبَاتَ إِخْرَاجَ حَبَّةٍ. And that also that this individual, this sheikh or whatever, has the ability to bring out the seeds in the growth of the earth. وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَرْزُقُ الْأَوْلَادِ. And they believe that they can give you children. You, like in Egypt, people go to the grave of Bedawi to try to be intimate with their spouse, so that maybe Bedawi are blessed them to have a child. This is khiyal. This is only in their imagination. This is only in their imagination. There's no difference between that, like I said again, and Batman. This is reality. This is how we should look at when people work in shirk. They're literally praying to an idea. They're literally praying to something they imagined or made with their hands and then imagined that it has abilities. That's exactly what they did. They imagined that it has abilities. وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَمْنَحْ صِحَّةً وَالشَّفَاءَ. And some of them, they believe that these things can give people health and sickness. And then they give them names. فَيُصَمُّونَ بَعْضُهَا بِبَعْضٍ أَسْمَاءَ الَّتِي يَخْتَرِعُونَها ثُمَّ يَعْكِفُونَ عَلَيْهَا عِبَادَةً وَدُعَاءً وَنِدَاءً. He says, and then you'll find that they give them names. that they have invented. You know, today I'm going to worship Samson. Today I'm going to worship Beelzebub. Today I'm going to worship Kronos. Today I'm going to worship aliens. They believe came down in Mesopotamia. Okay, and all of that type of stuff. This is stuff they imagined. People imagine these things. So when people are praying to the Tawheed, really it's an idea Shaitan gave them. Shaitan inspired it to him. Shaitan revealed it to him. It was just imagination. And then Shaitan feeds the imagination with different legislations and thoughts. And the human being adds on that with his own imagination. And then after centuries of passing this on and decades, a thousand years passing it on, it becomes real to people. But the reality is it came from just a whisper and a thought in the imagination of a human being. The whisper of Shaitan in the imagination of a human being. That's all it is. There's no reality to it whatsoever. And the problem with shirk is that it destroys the aql of a human being. The human being literally made an idol that he had to make with his own hands. He was sweating, had to find the stone or the wood. Then he literally made it out of a symbol or some type of structure that Shaitan whispered to him. Okay. Then he took his imagination and imagined what it would look like, made it with his own hands, put it somewhere, and then now he's scared of it. Literally, that's what it is. And then he fears not obeying it or bringing it food or obeying this particular stone or wood that he literally can push on the ground. Shirk literally takes away the intellect of a human being. So he says, then they sit at these things after they invent the names and they imagine these abilities for it. Then they sit there and make dua to it and call upon it. And then this goes on for many years and many years. Then it spreads to the rest of the community. Then it becomes what? A part of their custom, part of their belief system. يتمسكون بهذه العقائد وعادات وما هي إلا تخيلات. He says, and then they grab on to this belief and to this custom, until it becomes what? He said, it's nothing but what? تخيلات. Nothing but imaginations. It's their imagination, literally. لا وجود لها في حقيقة. And the Sheikh Ismail Abdul Ghani rahimahullah ta'ala said, in reality, there is no reality for these particular things that they're worshiping. They're literally talking to themselves. Now, in reality, the source issue is that they're praying to the Taaghoot, who is Shaitan, in some form or the other. But they don't know that. They believe they're talking to this deity who literally doesn't exist. This is the problem with shirk. فَلَيْسَ لِهَذَا مُسَمِّيَاتْ وُجُودٌ فِي الْعَالَمِ. He said, for these things that they have named, there's no presence in anywhere in the universe this thing exists. Any world, any time period, any place. It doesn't exist except in their minds, in their imaginations. إِذَا وَجِدَ أَحَدُ بِهَذَا الْإِسْمِ فَإِنَّهُ لَا سُلْطَانَ لَهُ فِي هَذَا الْكَوْنِ. He said, when you find anyone with this name, you find it, they call it Buddha, they call it Confucius, they call it Kronos, they call it Christ, they call it whatever they want to call it. Literally, there is no authority. They have no authority whatsoever. Even a membrane of a date seed, the little slit in the date seed. They don't own that much of the universe. Okay? Literally, the people who are praying to them have more ability and power in the universe than they do, than these particular gods they worship. The human being that's praying to these things and are afraid of these things are literally have more ability. You can talk, you can see, you can hear, you can strike that idol, you can burn the wood. You literally have the ability to make something happen underneath the will of Allah inside of the creation. But this particular God they're praying to has no reality, cannot do anything, can't protect itself. If a mouse came and stole from it, it couldn't do anything. A fly. At least you can swat the fly away and kill the mouse. The particular gods can't do anything. Look at the aql, the intellect. So he says, وَلِذَلِكَ يَمْلِكُ أَزْمَةَ الْأُمُورِ هُوَ اللَّهُ وَحْدَهُ لَيْسَ مِنْ أَسْمَاءِ. He said, so Allah is the only one who has those abilities. Everything we just mentioned, that these making these false claims, what they're imagining these things to do and imagining the abilities, it really has a haqiqah, a reality to it, but it's only for Allah. Allah is the one that has all those abilities that they're imagining for these Taaghoot, these Tawheed. So he says, لَيْسَ مِنْ أَسْمَاءِ Muhammad or Ali. And not from the names of Allah is Muhammad or Ali. The Prophet ﷺ has no authority in the universe. He has no authority in the universe. None. Ali radiallahu anhu has no authority in the universe. The Prophet ﷺ is unaware of what's happening to you right now. Ali radiallahu anhu is unaware what's happening to you right now. If you say, oh Muhammad, right now, the Prophet ﷺ does not have the ability to hear or respond. Whoever does that, he's imagining these abilities for the Prophet ﷺ. It's a fantasy. أما الذين سموا بهذه أسماء فهم لا يملكون من هذا العالم شيئا. As for those who are named with these different names from these false deities, they do not possess any ability to bring anything about, good or bad, inside the universe. أما الذي ينادى بمحمد أو بعلي then فلا وجود له بت. He said, it is no reality to this false claim or these fantasies that they have for the Prophet ﷺ, or for Ali, or for Isa, or any of the Anbiya righteous people. It's just an imagination that people have an imagination. So, إنما هي أسماء سماه جحال وآباءهم ما أنزل الله بها من سلطان. He said they're just names that the ignorant people and their forefathers had named. That their forefathers have named. So, ومن عارض بأمره رفض له تكون له قيمة قد نهى الله عن استرسال في أمثال هذه أوهام وأحلام. He says, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so you'll find people, for example, that they won't accept this. And they'll keep on praying to these things that really have no qima, no value to them, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it haram to even proceed in these types of things. These dreams or fantasies that people have. You know, these understandings of this or that, you know, the sun, the moon, praying to these particular things. It's literally, it's probably more fake than a movie. At least a movie, there's real people making the movie. There's real people, real words. You know, there's actually a reality to it, even though they're faking, they're lying, they're saying that somebody did not, the story isn't true. But at the very least, at least a movie is literally, you can see it. It's there. I mean, this stuff that these people are talking about is literally a fantasy. It didn't even happen. You know, it didn't happen on a stage. It didn't even happen on a movie set. It literally is just made up in somebody's mind and exists there. That's it. He says, وَإِن لُبَّ الدِّينِ وَجَوْحَرَهُ هُوَ أَن يَتَمَثَّلَ الْعَبْدُ أَوَامِرِ اللَّهِ وَيُحْثِرُهَا عَلَى كُلِّ أَمْرٍ. He said, so, and from the core of the deen, the source of the religion, inside of it, is that the slave does what Allah has commanded him and follows behind that, the best of his ability. And not to follow behind the asatir or taqaleed. Right? Not for us is to follow behind the Quran and the Sunnah, no matter what tribe or what people we're from or what land we're from. The Quran and Sunnah is established to us to bring us out of darkness into light. And sometimes darkness obviously is Aqidah, but sometimes darkness is also customs inside of our customs that we do every day. If it's going against a clear text, it's part of darkness. Plain and simple. I don't care how much we're used to it. So he says, ولكن أكثر الناس مع عاسف لا يسلكون هذا الطريق يؤثرون تقاليد مشايخهم And he said most people, they don't follow this way. Most people just follow behind or are affected by their culture, their scholars, and they follow behind these people, like the priests and the rabbis. People are affected by what they say because they believe these people have the ability to make laws, that the law gives them permission to make laws and gives them permission to change laws and to legislate like him. So people follow behind these particular people and it leads them astray. And before we go on, when he mentioned here that most people, that is for us to follow behind the legislation and not behind the asatir al-awwalin or taqalid. This doesn't mean that it's not permissible to know your heritage, to know who you are and where you come from. It doesn't mean that. The thing is that as we're learning who we are and as we finding our history, okay, and we're finding out exactly who African Americans really are, the whole issue whether we came on boats or not, all of that, this is the talk for it. But just to know who you are and where you come from doesn't mean that you follow behind the shirk and the kufr that our ancestors were upon. Oh, someone made it clear. Would you follow behind your even though they were devoid of knowledge? Okay, we're talking about learning cultural things that our people may have had, or language, or knowledge they may have possessed. We're not talking about following them in their kufr and shirk that our people were upon, our ancestors were upon thousands of years ago or whatever. No, we're not talking about that. Obviously, that's not permissible. But it is permissible to know you are. The Prophet ﷺ knew exactly who he was. Not only that, he was able to trace his whole heritage and history back. And those people who were before him were all kuffar. Inside the lineage, Ibn so-and-so, so-and-so, and son of so-and-so, and son all the way back. All of them were kuffar. But the Prophet knew who they were. And he knew exactly what tribe and who he came from. But he didn't follow behind them in their kufr and shirk. But he kept some of the cultural norms and some of the cultural things that were from his people. So that's a side note. But anyway, وَقَدْ ظَهْرَ مِنْ هَذِهِ آيَةٍ أَنْ تَمَسُّكْ بِالشُّرَةِ وَمِنْهَاجًا. Now we're going to get in, he says, وإلى أمر يستند إليه هو من أمور التي خصصها الله لتعظيمه فمن عامل مخلوق بذلك تحقق عليه الشرك. Before we go on, this ayat that he's talking about in Surah Yusuf, the Shaykh is talking about. He's saying that in this ayat, you were told to hold on to a shir'ah wa minhaja. You were told to hold on to a certain thing and not to follow the things that to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and leave alone the names and the gods that your forefathers were called into and that they themselves named and invented. Okay? And things that they did for them that were only specifically for Allah. They venerated these particular names as they venerated Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So listen what it says. It says, Ya sahib al-sijni arbab mutafarriquna khayru am Allah wahid al-qahhar. Okay. One of the benefits we get from this, again a side note, but I always like to bring this point out. Yusuf alayhi salam was oppressed by a disbelieving government, which was the government of Egypt at the time. He was put in prison, falsely accused, and put in prison. Was his dawah to protesting and overthrowing the government? Was that his dawah to these people? Was he saying, oh man, we're going to get out of here. I'm going to gather. We're going to gather together. What they do to you? Was that his dawah? It doesn't mean that we don't speak about oppression. I'm not saying that, but I'm talking about directly trying to use violent means to cause trouble in a society with bloodshed and upheaval. Look at what he said. Even all that, he did not say anything to them about that particular government. He didn't say anything about the Pharaoh or the Aziz. He didn't call him out of his name, didn't expose his sins, even though he knew he was in the house with him. But we spent all day worrying about Trump. We spent all day long posting stuff about Trump. Is this the manhaj of the Salaf? This is the manhaj of the Anbiya? Let's see. He said, he called them to Tawheed. Didn't even mention the government. Didn't even mention the Aziz at the time. Because I don't think they were called pharaohs at this time. Along those best, historically. So he says, مَا تَعْبَدُونَ مِن دُونِهِ. إلا أسماء سميتموها أنتم وآباءكم ما أنزل الله بها من سلطان. He said, and what you're worshiping, he turned him to Tawheed. He's going to negate shirk. He's going to refute shirk right now. He said, what you are worshiping other than Allah is nothing but names that your forefathers had named before you, that Allah has sent down no authority for. Just an imagination. It exists only in your mind. Then he said, إِنَّ حُكْمُ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ أَمْرَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهِ ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. And he says that the ruling and judgment is for Allah. Okay? Not these gods you're worshiping. And he made it clear that the manhaj and the way to be followed is the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and leaving off these false gods and these false Tawheed. And then he mentioned what the one religion is. Then he mentioned what the one way is. He said, ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ. And that, meaning, disbelieving the Tawheed, these fake fantasies that you have, and believing in Allah alone as the one to be worshipped, that is the straight religion. That is sincerity. That is the way. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. But most, without a shadow of a doubt, most of mankind do not know. They mean most of the people you're going to meet will not be believers. They will not. They will be worshiping fantasies and make-believe. They will be worshiping basically unicorns. I mean, the false gods will worship basically unicorns. I mean, it's no different than a unicorn or the Easter bunny. I'm telling you, it's no different. None of it is real. It just exists in the people's mind. Just exists in the people's mind. And then they make ta'deem. And then they venerate these particular things. So, the Sheikh says, whoever does this for creation, meaning he applies the reality of divinity and worship and dua and calling upon acts of ibadah, right? He takes these imaginary abilities that he gives us, whatever he's worshiping, and he applies that to other than Allah, then this is shirk. لا طريق للعباد لاهتداء إلا شريعة الله وأحكام إلا الرسول. So there is also what he explains here, this ayah, that there is no way for the slave to be guided except through the Sharia of Allah and through the implementation and through the explanation and the way that Prophet ﷺ showed us. There's no way. It says, إِنَّ الْحُكْمَ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ. That hukum kawni, that universal rulings, that Allah, judgment that Allah placed in creation, everyday affairs, and then the legislated judgments that Allah is pleased with. Meaning, you have the hukum kawni, the universal hukum that Allah has, these judgments. Things happen that He's not pleased with, and things happen that He's pleased with inside the universe from His hikmah and His wisdom. But the hukum shari is only what Allah is pleased with. Secondly, the hukum kawni, the universal ruling, the universal hukum that Allah has legislated in the universe to happen. Everybody has to fall underneath that. Kufar, kafir, Muslim, they all have to do that. They all have to obey what happens. No one cannot go to the bathroom. No one cannot eat. No one cannot get thirsty. No one cannot be out in the snow and not get cold. No one cannot be out in the heat and not get hot. No one can live forever. No one can avoid death. All these things, Kafir and Muslim are equal in it. But when it comes to the hukum shari'i, the legislative hukum that Allah puts down, the things that He has pleaded inside the religion, Allah, only a certain few, chosen few, obey that. But then others, most of human beings, disobey that and don't follow it. And the first of that hukum, the first of those judgments, that Allah is worshipped alone. فَمَنْ أَثَرَ كَلَامُ إِمَامٍ أو مُجْتَهِدٍ. Whoever is affected by following imam, or sometimes who makes a mujtahid, that he believes in a mujtahid, or a qatab. A qatab or aqtab is people, extreme Sufis believe that these people are four corners of the universe, and that Allah has given them divine abilities to aid him, and taking care of the creation. This is what a qatb is. Or a ghawth. This is what that stuff is. It's in Sufism, Shiism, and things like that. Extreme versions of it. Anyway. Or alam or sheikh. Okay? Or abwad or jed. Or malak or wazir. Or qas, mean a priest. Or a sadin, or somebody who's a servant of the Kaaba, that you raise to a level of extreme righteousness to the point where you believe that he should be prayed to. And they take these people that I mentioned, or these things that I mentioned, these Christians I mentioned, they take their rulings and they take their things, right, believing that they have the right to legislate. Now, this is what we have to understand. They believe, literally, that they have the right to legislate from Allah. If you go back and look at the beliefs of the Sufis, belief of the Shia, belief of any of these, Buddha, Hindu, they all believe that these things are divine beings and that represent God. The Pope, they believe that he's a representative of God. And most Christian sects believe their priests are representatives of God on earth, except for the Protestants. But most of the Orthodox, which are the majority of the Christians, believe that their priests and their rabbis, the Jews, that they have rights, that Allah has given them divine right to legislate for them. You can look up these beliefs if you want. You can research these beliefs. This is what they believe. This is what Buddhists believe. This is what Hindus believe. This is what Confucius people believe. Okay? And they believe that these people are like the Japanese believe their emperor was the gods. He's embodiment of the gods. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So they believe ala qawli rasul. And for the Muslim ones, they take the statements and the legislation of these particular people over that of the Prophet ﷺ. Over that of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, obviously, sometimes a person can make an ijtihad. You can do research, and it may go against the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, but the scholar gets rewarded for that. And if he's right, he get 2 rewards. Okay? All right? And you may read something, misunderstand it, and misapply it. That doesn't mean that you're committing shirk and kufr against Allah and his messenger. Okay? We're talking about people who literally believe that this sheikh in the masjid or the sheikh in the grave literally can legislate for them in their life. And that his statement goes over that of the Prophet ﷺ. And they make statements like the Prophet ﷺ will follow the messengers are for the general people, not people who have reached a certain status. Once you reach a certain status religiously, that you don't have to follow messengers anymore. That's just for the common people. That's literally what they say. That's a whole different conversation, a different belief. So, obviously, you can fall into shirk or major kufr dealing with this issue. Okay? Not always shirk. Shirk is always kufr, but kufr is not always shirk. And that's a whole other conversation. Okay? So, وَاحْتَاجَ بِقَوْلِ الشَّيْخ أو أستاذ معارضا آية أو حديث. That they'll use a statement of a scholar or who they're learning from to go against the statement of Allah or hadith of the Prophet. And this is something I want to bring up. We got to be careful with. Obviously, this is talking about the extreme versions of that. Meaning people who are literally making shirk, who believe that these people have divine right to legislate. But if you find people like these so-called Salafi cults and Salafi publications and places like that, they are literally on a borderline with this. Because they'll take the statement of a scholar who they're learning from over ayah or hadith. They may not say that, but literally they'll do that. When you blind follow a scholar to the point where you believe that he's a manhaj, that you say Sheikh Rabi is a manhaj, and you say Sheikh so-and-so said this, Sheikh so-and-so said that, that's our way, that's our belief, then you're just as close to this. I love you too, big sis. Literally, this is what you're doing. And they're going to lead you into that. To extremism. I call it sheikhism. To where you can go into the extremes where it becomes shirk. Or kufr. You start denying ayat. You start denying the truth because you're arrogant and you're blind following a scholar. It can lead you to this type of destruction. And they believe أنه هو الشارع أصلي. أنه كان يتكلم عن هواء. So You will find some of them saying that the Prophet ﷺ wasn't always right when it comes to revelation. That he was just speaking of his own opinion. Literally, you'll find some of them say that. You'll find some of the extreme Sufis and extreme Shiite make that claim. And he says that, and also some of them will say that revelation came to their scholars. Revelation came to their shuyukh. And they make this obligatory to accept upon their community. And this is clearly shirk. Because they are placing someone as a divine legislator with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? A divine legislator. Right? Divine legislator. Meaning they believe that this is literally a divine legislation from Allah Azza wa Jalla. Okay? A divine legislation from Allah. And that these people, Allah has given them the ability to make judgment for him in the earth. Okay? This is a deep issue that people fall into. So they say, Inna hukma illa lillah wa rasuluhu mukhbir sadiq. So the Prophet, he says, the hukm illa lillah, meaning judgment for Allah. The two types of judgment, universal law and legislative law inside the religion, inside the deen, is only for Allah and his messenger. And the messenger is a mukhbir, sadiq. He is the one that gives the information from Allah. And the Prophet didn't make mistakes inside revelation. He didn't speak on his own hawa. So anyone who denies this has left Islam, has committed major kufr, has committed major kufr. So the reality is, again, the false gods they are worshiping have no reality to them. Either they're just names they made up, fantasies they believe in, or even if it is a real physical thing, like a sheikh that they're worshiping and praying to, and calling upon, even if they far close to him, he's dead or alive. Even if that's the case, even if the person was real, it's still the abilities that they are giving him and the rights they are given to this particular human being or to creation is imagined and only exists in their minds. It's imagined and only exists in their minds. So again, the Taaghoot, Shaitan, and the Tawheed, that he is calling people to worship other than Allah, in reality is just fantasies and the abilities. And the reality of these false gods that the people are praying to other than Allah is reality is just something that's imaginative, a fairy tale that exists only in the mind. It has no reality. It exists on paper. So inshallah ta'ala, this just was the quick class, and the next class will be on veneration. Submission is the right of Allah, and all veneration, all, and submission is only for Allah. And what did the Shaykh mean by that? What does he mean by that? And inshallah, he'll go into that. And I appreciate everyone watching. May Allah bless you and keep us on the straight path. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.